John Clark here, my company Sunshine Prosthetics, doing part two of November's Academy Mentoring Moments. So, on the plate is continued insight into effective patient communication. And today, I want to give you my particular strategy when it comes to some of these early appointments and what I am most often having to struggle with residents with. And then a lot of this is going to be like a list because there's an awful lot of fantastic resources when it comes to this that are worth your exploration. So I hope some of this cues you for further education for yourself. So let me just start with one of those list type of items. Hopefully, in your education to date, you have learned about primary learning styles. Hopefully, you know your own. If you don't, you need to discover it. So, primary learning styles are auditory, visual, kinesthetic. And you should understand that there's cultural shifts and changes when it comes to this. As a whole culture, we are becoming a more visual group of learners because of interactions like this video. So, knowing your own is helpful. And then learning for the cues that people provide of their own is also helpful. Again, being able to mirror someone else's learning style helps you effectively teach them. Towards that end, it makes sense to know how to teach in all aspects. For example, if you're teaching someone for the first time to don a prosthetic liner, knowing how to effectively describe that with visual language and to have visuals that you use and can leave with the patient is sort of essential. Knowing how to describe that with auditory language is helpful. And being able to demonstrate with hands-on is essential. Using all of those is part of effective teaching and communication. Now, to a specific that I want to go over and repeat before we just go to lists of all sorts of things you can consider. Repetition. It is unreasonable to expect anybody to learn something on the first hearing. And this is one of those things that I find amusing because all the time I'll be following up with a patient and like instructing them on volume management with sock ply. And I will hear auditory, "Oh, John, so and so never told me about that. Thank you so much. That's wonderful." Now, do I actually believe that? No. I teach and train my folks to always be teaching this. It's not surprising when we hear it though, because it's a very good chance that they heard that 2 or 3 times in their previous instructions, but they had no need for sock ply. And so now it's been some period of time and suddenly they have the need, and it's in that need that the connection finally happens, that the light turns on, that they finally get that lesson. So that's not surprising. It takes repetition. Going over sock ply and volume management with someone that needs it repeatedly is important. If you have someone that really doesn't need it right now, here's what I do with all of my patients. All right, so this is working great now, and you don't need to worry about these socks that we've talked about and told you about and how you use them. So we're going to put this bag somewhere up in the corner, And what I want you to remember is this is going to be working really good and you'll be doing really well. And there'll come a day when all of a sudden it's like, this doesn't feel right. Something's not working right here. I want you to remember on that day, oh, John told me this day would come. I have to go find that bag of socks. So there's just a cool example of how you can set your patient up for success and have a trigger for a changed event where they then have to consider, oh yeah, there's this sock supply management thing. So repetition. Repetition, demonstration. We get to live in a very physical world where we can demonstrate what your patient needs to be doing with their device. And so it's important to demonstrate the right actions when it comes to donning and doffing and other things surrounding what you're asking them to do with their orthotic or prosthetic device. Observation with cueing. Now here's where it gets really difficult for someone first in the field. You cannot help your patient here. You have to develop your patience with this. I know you can put it on. I know it's quick for you. I know you might need to rush to your next appointment. But to take the time and allow them to struggle and cue them if they need it, that is essential. So, repetition matters. Demonstration matters. Observation with cueing, where you don't touch it, matters. And the next step, your patients might not always be ready for this right away. But then if they did really well with the observation with cueing, observation without cueing, where you just let them struggle even if they're doing something wrong and see if they can resolve it themselves. Now, struggle. One of the things I want to let you know is that you want to have your patients okay with struggle. You want to let them know that it's okay, that that's a normal part of what they need to do as they're learning to work with their devices. And with that, you should set up what's the next struggle? What's the next point we're going to be working on? And put it in your plan. As part of your clinical note, you should have what you and the patient agreed upon that they'd be working on to advance their care. And we just talked about cueing and the need for cueing. Liners are a great example. With a prosthetic liner, that's not always easy for someone to get right off the bat. Letting them know that, hey, it took our help to do this today. We sort of expect that over the course of the next week, if you practice with this many times a day, just putting it on and taking it off, that when we return, you're going to be successfully doing that yourself. Putting that in your note, so if anybody comes after you, they know what the patient's homework was and where we expected them to be. So let me repeat. Repetition, demonstration, observation with cueing, observation, no cueing. Give them things to struggle with and let them know it's okay. Now, we need to provide a bit of refereeing. Most of the time, there may be family members that surround a patient that want to help. And it's okay to tell them, nope, this is the patient's responsibility. We don't want you helping here. It's okay to tell them where help is appropriate at this juncture in time. but your patients will be much more successful and independent if they do it themselves. So really encourage them to do that. All right. Now on the listing side of things, so we mentioned primary learning style, auditory, kinesthetic, visual, having a language and the ability to understand someone's style is important. Another thing that can make a really big difference is learning DISC. So DISC is another psychological categorization. If you know Myers-Briggs, DISC is just way simpler than that. It's really just 4. I'm not even going into the details of the 4. But because it's just 4, you have the opportunity to sort of learn yourself and then start observing it in others. DISC is specifically a way of assessing folks that lets you step into their communication style. The previous video we talked about mirroring. If you can sort of determine their DISC, it lets you more effectively communicate. So looking out for that matters. When it comes to your written instructions, be sure to have plenty of pictures. It's important. It helps with that visual communication. It's also the case that you want to be de-jargonizing your language. We know you got the big words. Don't use them with your patients. That's jargon that they don't know. You want to simplify your language. And when it comes to your printed material, you should actually run your printed material through the Flesch-Kincaid evaluation of language level to make sure that you are not making overly complex handouts that are too challenging to be good instruction. Flesch-Kincaid, learning styles, DISC, and right back to one little system. Repeat, demonstrate, observation with cueing, observation with no cueing. Give your patients the next step, the thing that they should be struggling with before you see them the next time. And follow-up was part of the instruction that we're talking about when it comes to this month's questions. And I would tell you that would be the most important thing, I think, in regards to follow-up. That, in your note, you have a plan that includes what the patient is working on. So when you show up, you get to see where they are. Understand, if you show up and they haven't accomplished what you expected, is it a matter of maybe they had health concerns in between? Or is it a matter of you need to work on your motivational interviewing and figure out what the obstacles were and how to get past them? I hope this helps you communicate with your patients and deepen your skills and care for folks more. Bye.